Amid the skyscrapers of Manhattan, a young analyst faces the weight of invisible legacies, power plays, and choices that could change his life. Among betrayed loyalties and hidden truths, he discovers that courage can cost more than any figure on Wall Street. The metallic sound of the subway echoed through the tunnels as Nathan Carter clutched the worn leather briefcase against his chest. Through the foggy window, Manhattan's skyscrapers gleamed like golden sentinels on the gray horizon. With each passing station, his stomach twisted more. Last day of the week, he whispered to himself, "You can do it." At 29, Nathan was a junior analyst at Blackridge Capital, one of the most prestigious investment firms on Wall Street. His navy suit, bought on sale, was impeccably pressed, a detail he had learned from his father, who always said that appearance is a man's first line of defense. Exiting the subway, Nathan adjusted his red tie and took a deep breath. The memory of his father, Richard Carter, still hurt like an open wound. A respected accountant in their small town, Richard had lost everything in the 2008 crisis. Clients deserted him, the bank took the family home, and his heart couldn't bear the weight of the shame, even though he had done nothing wrong. Wall Street devours the small, were the last words of his father before the funeral. Nathan could still feel his mother's fragile embrace, whispering that it wasn't their fault. The day after the burial, in front of the cracked mirror in the bathroom of the house they would have to leave, Nathan made a vow. He would prove that a man of integrity could survive, and even succeed, in the stone heart of Wall Street. The lobby of Blackridge gleamed with Italian marble and tempered glass. As the elevators ascended to the 43rd floor, Nathan was mentally reviewing his numbers for that morning's presentation. The strategic report for the hedge fund Asian Partners was completed after 3 nights of working into the early hours. "Good morning, Melissa," he greeted the receptionist who barely looked up. Nathan walked through the corridors observing the familiar faces. For someone without a powerful surname or influential patrons, each step was an achievement. The interns from Harvard and Yale, with their perfect smiles and family connections, received more attention in one day than he did in an entire month. At his desk, a cup of coffee cooling next to the monitor, Nathan opened his email. The message from the COO flashed at the top, "Asian Partners Report, board meeting at 10 a.m. He checked the numbers for the 11th time. Everything was perfect. The financial projection charts for the Asian market were calibrated with mathematical precision. The risk modeling he had created even considered the yen's exchange rate fluctuations. His direct boss, Roger Simmons, had reviewed the document the night before and given his approval. Nathan allowed himself a rare moment of pride. If this report impressed the board, it could be the boost his career needed. At 9:58, he picked up the printed copies and walked towards the meeting room, feeling the weight of curious glances. Inside the glass-walled room, the directors settled into black leather chairs around the mahogany table. Reynolds, the CEO of Blackridge, a 55-year-old man with perfectly trimmed gray hair, motioned for him to enter. "Carter, we're ready." Nathan distributed the copies and positioned himself. The presentation flowed well during the first few minutes until Reynolds frowned and pointed to page 17. "These quarterly projection numbers don't match what we discussed yesterday." A heavy silence fell over the room. Nathan felt his blood freeze as he examined the page. The numbers were different from those he had reviewed the night before. "So, I checked this data repeatedly last night and—" "Carter," Reynolds interrupted, "do you understand what is at stake here? This report will guide a $380 million investment. This discrepancy would completely change our strategy." The meeting turned into a courtroom. The directors, in their immaculate suits, watched him like vultures. Nathan tried to explain that he had reviewed the numbers countless times, but his voice seemed strangely distant. "Immediate suspension, Mr. Carter," Reynolds finally announced, "while we conduct an internal investigation into this failure." The world collapsed beneath Nathan's feet. Everything he had worked for, all the way he had come since his father's funeral, seemed to disintegrate before his eyes. That night, in his one-bedroom apartment in Queens, Nathan sat on the edge of the bed, holding the yellowed note he kept inside his father's Bible. "Never compromise your truth, even when the whole world condemns you, read the shaky handwriting. His eyes burned as he gazed at the framed photo of his father on the bedside table. The digital clock read 3:22 a.m., and sleep felt like a distant impossibility. On Monday, the humiliation was almost palpable. His badge had been temporarily deactivated, and he had to wait at the reception for a security escort. Colleagues who once shared coffee with him now looked away. In the legal department, a company lawyer questioned him for 2 hours about the report. "I checked those numbers multiple times," Nathan repeated, exhausted. "Someone must have altered the document after I submitted it." The lawyer gave him a look of pity. "I understand it's hard to admit a mistake, Mr. Carter, but without proof." The following days were a blur of anxiety and determination. Nathan mentally reviewed every step of the process, every person who could have had access to the document. At night, he awoke sweaty, dreaming of numbers and spreadsheets that twisted like snakes. On Thursday, authorized to retrieve some belongings from his desk, Nathan was walking dejectedly through the corridors when he noticed a woman in the IT department observing him. Clara Evans, he vaguely recognized. She was always in the corners, almost invisible, with her black-rimmed glasses and discreet clothing. As he emptied his drawer, he sensed a presence. Clara was standing beside his desk. "I know you don't know me well," she said, hesitantly, "but I found something that might interest you." Nathan looked at her, intrigued. "Not here," she whispered. "The cafe on the corner, at 7. The Sunrise Cafe was a modest establishment compared to the sophisticated bars frequented by the Blackridge executives. At a table in the back, Nathan waited, drumming his fingers nervously. Clara arrived punctually, carrying a thin folder. Her brown eyes, behind her glasses, revealed an intelligence that many probably underestimated. "I work in server backup maintenance," she explained after ordering a coffee. "Part of my job is to archive old emails onto secondary drives." She opened the folder, revealing prints of electronic correspondence. "I found these exchanges between Jenkins from the finance department and Roger Simmons, his supervisor. They were sent the night before the meeting." Nathan examined the documents, and his heart raced. The emails explicitly discussed alterations in the report numbers, mentioning that adjustments were necessary to offset the losses from the Asian sector that Reynolds doesn't want to report yet. Simmons' last message stated, "Carter is the perfect scapegoat. No connections, no patrons. No one will question." "My God," Nathan whispered, feeling a mix of anger and relief. "How did you manage this?" "The system keeps backup copies that few know about," Clara replied, adjusting her glasses. "I discovered it by chance when I needed to restore old files." The waitress brought the coffees, and for a moment, both remained silent. "Why are you helping me?" Nathan finally asked. Clara lowered her eyes to the steaming cup. "My father was a security guard at a brokerage in Lower Manhattan. 5 years ago, when a sum of money disappeared, he was accused. He had no way to prove his innocence." Her voice trembled slightly. "He lost his job, his reputation. He could never find work in the financial sector again. Now he drives a taxi on the night shift." Nathan felt an immediate connection. "I'm sorry. Wall Street doesn't care about those beneath it," Clara continued, with a determined gleam in her eyes. "But maybe together we can change that, even if just for a moment." In the days that followed, Nathan and Clara met after work in public libraries and quiet cafes. She, with her knowledge of the internal systems, managed to recover more evidence, earlier versions of the report, file access records, change logs. Nathan, with his financial experience, identified exactly how the numbers had been manipulated to hide substantial losses in failed investments. On one of those nights, while they worked side by side at a library table, Nathan noticed how Clara bit her lip when she concentrated. There was something comforting in her presence. No judgments, no expectations, just genuine determination. "You know," she said, breaking the silence, "my father always said the truth is like water. It can be blocked for a while, but it always finds a way." Nathan smiled for the first time in weeks. "My father used to say that character is what you do when no one is watching." "It seems like our parents would have gotten along well," Clara replied, returning the smile. The legal department of Blackridge had scheduled a final hearing for Monday. Nathan would have one last chance to defend himself before the termination for cause was finalized. On the eve, alone in his apartment, he organized all the evidence into a clear and irrefutable presentation. Then, exhausted, he sat at the kitchen table and opened his father's worn Bible. The yellowed note fell onto his lap. The words, handwritten, seemed to shine under the faint light. Never compromise your truth, even when the whole world condemns you. For the first time in years, Nathan felt like praying. Kneeling on the worn floor, he whispered, "God, if there is still room for justice in this place, give me courage, not to save my career, but to honor the memory of those who believed in me." Tears fell onto the open pages, and with them, strangely, came a peace he hadn't felt in a long time. The 50th floor conference room was set up like a courtroom. On one side were Reynolds, Simmons, Jenkins, and 3 corporate lawyers. On the other side was only Nathan, with his worn briefcase and a copy of the documents Clara had helped gather. "Mr. Carter," Reynolds began with a controlled voice, "this is your final opportunity to explain what happened to the Asian Partners report." Nathan took a deep breath and began, "Thank you, Mr. Reynolds. Actually, I would like to show something to everyone." He plugged his flash drive into the projection system and opened the first file, a screenshot showing the original version of the report, with date and time. "This is the document I submitted, verified and approved by Mr. Simmons at 7:42 p.m. the night before the meeting." Then, he opened the emails exchanged between Jenkins and Simmons at 10:17 p.m., explicitly discussing the necessary changes to protect Reynolds from the consequences. The faces around the table paled. Simmons adjusted his tie, visibly uncomfortable. This is corporate privacy invasion," Jenkins stammered. Nathan continued methodically, presenting each piece of evidence. System log showing Simmons' access to the document at 11:04 p.m., side-by-side comparisons of the versions, and finally, the email where his name was mentioned as the perfect scapegoat. A stunned silence dominated the room. Reynolds, whose normally impassive face now had a reddish hue, stared intently at Simmons. "How did you obtain these documents, Mr. Carter?" one of the lawyers asked, breaking the silence. "Blackridge systems maintain automatic backups and change logs," Nathan responded calmly. "Nothing was hacked or obtained illegally. It was just accessed through the normal data recovery protocols." Reynolds stood up abruptly. "We need a break. Now." When everyone returned, 30 minutes later, the atmosphere had changed dramatically. Reynolds took the floor, with an expression Nathan had never seen before. "Mr. Carter, it seems we owe you a formal apology," said the CEO, each word seemingly costing him immense effort. "An internal investigation will be conducted immediately regarding the actions of Mr. Simmons and Mr. Jenkins." Simmons, now visibly shaken, tried to protest but was silenced by a sharp gesture from Reynolds. "Your suspension is officially revoked, Mr. Carter. Moreover, in recognition of the injustice you suffered, I would like to offer you a promotion to senior analyst, effective immediately." Nathan felt a wave of conflicting emotions, relief, vindication, but also a strange melancholy. Looking at the faces around him, he realized that victory would not change the nature of Wall Street. The system would continue to devour the small, sacrificing the vulnerable for the powerful. "Thank you for the offer, Mr. Reynolds," he finally replied. "But I need a few days to consider my future at Blackridge." Leaving the building that afternoon, Nathan spotted Clara waiting in the square in front. The autumn wind stirred her dark hair, and her eyes revealed anxiety. "How did it go?" she asked, approaching. Nathan told her everything, watching the smile spread across her face as the story progressed. "So, did you accept the promotion?" Clara finally asked. Nathan looked at the Manhattan skyline, where the sun was beginning to set, painting the skyscrapers gold. "I haven't decided yet," he answered honestly. "Part of me wants to accept, to prove that I made it. Another part questions if this is the place you want to be," Clara completed softly. They walked side by side to a small park, sitting on a worn wooden bench. "Do you know what I discovered, Nathan?" Clara said, watching the birds flying in formation above them. The greatest victory on Wall Street is not against the market. It's against injustice. Nathan smiled, feeling a peace he hadn't experienced since before his father's death. The true wealth is not just in numbers, he replied, thinking of the yellowed note, but in character, justice, and faith. That night, upon arriving home, Nathan placed his father's photo on the table and wrote a letter, not of resignation, but of conditional acceptance of the promotion. His new position could be a platform to change things from the inside out, to protect the future Nathan Carters arriving on Wall Street with dreams and promises. And when he fell asleep, for the first time in a long time, he didn't dream of numbers or spreadsheets, but of his father smiling, proud, under an infinitely starry sky.